Dear listeners, we would love to get to know you better. Please write in the comments which country and city you are watching us from. Thank you. My name is Jake Gray. I'm 35, and I was married to my beautiful wife for 6 years. She's 31 but looks like she's 25. We didn't have any children. I was ready, but she wasn't. She kept telling me, "Soon, honey, soon." Our intimacy was great, but it was the kisses and hugs I cherished most. I tried to connect with her every chance I got, just to feel close. When I held her in my arms, I felt peaceful and loved. She was always responsive and available throughout our marriage, and I thought I was happy. I believed she was too. My mistake was trusting her. Her name is Kelly, and my love turned into a blinding hate followed by a cold, empty void. I've heard that the opposite of love is indifference, but that's not true for me. My love morphed into a dull, bone-chilling rage. My soul feels dead, and I fear I'll never recover. If she were in trouble, I would watch from a distance, feeling nothing for her plight. You might wonder what happened to turn a kind, loving man into a vengeful figure. It all started at last year's company Christmas party. Kelly often dressed provocatively for these events, and while I didn't mind too much, I was aware of the attention she received. It flattered me that the most desirable woman in the room was mine, but I couldn't help but wonder whom she was trying to impress. I usually wasn't a jealous guy, but what was mine, and as long as that was clear, we were okay. Before we left, I warned Kelly that many men would approach her, and I trusted her to handle it respectfully. I've earned the nickname the Crusher among my martial arts partners for a reason. They know I can be intimidating. Kelly had never seen that side of me, and I hoped she never would. Still, an uneasy feeling crept in before we left the house. "Why do you look like your dog just died, Jake? Don't you want to go to the party?" she asked, giving me her charming smile, the one that always made my heart race. "To tell you the truth, I'd really rather skip the party this year," I admitted, hoping she would agree with me. "Why, honey? I thought you always had fun at these parties," she said, slipping on a pair of sheer black stockings. "Don't be such a party pooper. We don't get out dancing much. I really need to let my hair down and have some fun. I'm almost done getting ready. Come on, let's go." She sounded a bit irritated at my hesitation. Something felt off. She seemed too eager about the party. I reminded her that last year's event had gotten a bit too wild for my taste, with people drinking and acting recklessly. Since Jim became the vice president, he had flirted with nearly every woman in the office, and there were rumors about him crossing lines. I didn't like the way he danced with her last year. Jim was the president's nephew, a man who thought too highly of himself. He was married with 2 kids, and I felt sorry for his wife, who deserved better. I had seen him humiliate her with his behavior at previous parties. "Don't worry, Jake," Kelly reassured me. "I'm proud to be your woman. I love you more than life itself. There's no need for you to be concerned. Sure, he's tall, rich, and handsome, but he'll never be the man you are. You're my baby, and you always will be." Despite her words, I wasn't completely at ease with her description of him. I shrugged it off, though, trusting her loyalty. Love can blind a man to many things, and I could see my fate was sealed. There would be no changing her mind. Sometimes a man has to give an inch to gain a mile. I just wanted to ensure nothing interfered with my plans for a passionate evening when we got home. When we arrived at the party a little late, some guests were already a bit tipsy. The music filled the room, and people danced, laughed, and generally enjoyed themselves. I decided to try to fit in, hoping the evening would end sooner rather than later. As soon as we walked through the door, Jim Stevens approached and offered me a weak handshake. I felt a shiver run down my spine as he glared at Kelly, taking her hand and giving it an exaggerated kiss while completely ignoring me. My blood pressure spiked, and my head began to throb. It wouldn't have taken much more for me to lose my temper. I could tell it was going to be a long night. Kelly gave me a reassuring wink, signaling that everything was fine. so I tried to shake off my irritation and mingled with the guests. Jim walked over again, this time taking Kelly by the arm. She didn't protest, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could tolerate it. "Let me introduce you to some of our new staff," he said with a grin that felt too familiar. He acted as if Kelly was his to claim. "You don't mind, do you, Jake?" he added, not waiting for my answer. Kelly gave me her please relax look, so I let it pass. My good friend Eddie noticed what was happening and pulled me into a group of guys playing a drinking game, sharing tall tales while their wives circulated and chatted. I pretended to drink. I preferred to keep my wits about me. As I enjoyed the company of my friends, I occasionally glanced around for Kelly. I noticed her dancing with a couple of guys, and everything seemed innocent enough. However, as time passed, my urge to head home and be with my wife grew stronger. It had been a few days since we'd been intimate, which felt like an eternity. I was glad she had a chance to unwind, but I couldn't help but wonder where she had gone. I searched for her and finally spotted her friend Pam. When I asked if she had seen Kelly, Pam looked a little uneasy and told me she had seen Kelly dancing with Jim about 15 minutes ago. An uneasy feeling crept over me, and I felt my stomach knot. I began looking for Kelly outside the ballroom. As I approached the small, unused conference room, I heard voices. Curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped inside. My heart dropped as I saw my wife bent over the arm of a chair, intimately engaged with Jim. At first, I was paralyzed. It felt surreal. They were so caught up in their actions that they didn't notice me at first. When they finally did, Kelly gasped, "Oh my God, Jake, let me explain," struggling to gather herself. "You have nothing to say to me, you liar," I spat, my voice laced with venom. "I worshipped the ground you walked on, and this is how you repay me. We're finished. You are no longer my wife." She couldn't meet my gaze, and I grabbed her hair, forcing her to look at me. "What do you see? Do you see the eyes of the man who loved you? You shattered my heart and soul tonight." I could see her desperation as she tried to respond, but no words came. As I confronted her, Jim stood there looking amused. Just then, 3 of my friends, Eddie, Paul, and Dave, entered the room, having sensed trouble. They stood frozen, unsure of what to say. I turned to Jim. "You piece of trash. I should take you down right here. If you try anything, I'll have you arrested for assault, and my uncle will fire you. Maybe I'll just handle you for fun," he grinned, clearly unfazed. "I've had your precious wife several times," he taunted, a sneer on his face. I could feel the anger building within me. Though part of me wanted to unleash it all on him, I knew it wasn't worth sacrificing my freedom. "You will pay for your disrespect," I said, locking eyes with him, blocking his exit deliberately. His uncertainty showed. He decided to bluff his way out, attempting to push past me. That was a mistake. I sidestepped his advance and landed a quick blow to his gut. As he doubled over, I seized him by the neck and began to slap him, my anger giving me strength. The first slap stunned him, twisting his head as he fell to the ground. I lost count of how many times I hit him, each slap a release of the pent-up fury within me. "All right, enough. Please, no more," he begged, his desperation palpable. "You will live to regret this, over and over," I said, my voice cold. "Deciding to betray my trust. You took what was mine. When I'm finished, you will be divorced and disgraced. I'm going to sue you for alienation of affection, and then I'll sue the company for your misconduct on company time. It'll be rich, and you'll be in trouble. You've messed with the wrong man. Hear me clearly. The wrong man." The tension in the room escalated as 2 police officers entered. I turned to Kelly, unable to forget her role in this. "You gave up a good man in your marriage for him. You deserve each other," I said. He attacked me. "Arrest him," Jim shouted, panic rising in his voice. The officers assessed the situation. "It sounds like self-defense," one officer said, looking at me. "Is that correct?" "Yes," I confirmed. When Jake caught him with his wife, he tried to attack Jake, Eddie added. The officers nodded. 3 witnesses saw it, one added. Let's get him out of here, the sergeant said, ignoring Jim's protests. He's lying. I didn't do anything, Jim shouted, his desperation clear. The cops shifted their focus to Kelly, who appeared in shock. Are you all right, ma'am? Did you see what happened? Her lips moved, but no words came out as she sat there, tears in her eyes. Do you want to press charges against him? The sergeant asked, pointing at Jim. The sympathy in the room leaned toward me, even though Jim had a swollen face. He came after me, I replied. I'd like to press charges. The sergeant looked at me with understanding. If there's anything I can do for you, just call the station and ask for Sergeant Connor. I understand, I replied. As the officers prepared to take Jim away, Jake said, We'll talk later. Eddie, one of my friends, approached me, looking deeply into my eyes before giving me a hug. Hang tough, he said, leaving the room. Now, only Kelly and I remained. I picked up her belongings from the chair and tucked them away, knowing I'd deal with that later. She had calmed down, but it was evident that she dreaded the confrontation ahead. A chilling realization settled over me. I felt a detachment from the woman I once loved, as if she were now a stranger. I looked at Kelly and felt the weight of the situation. How does a man erase the love he once had? I had no idea. The anger inside me kept my grief at bay, guarding what little sanity I had left. In that moment, I resolved to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. Get your coat and meet me at the car. Be quick, I instructed, turning away from her. I didn't want her to see my pain or feel any sympathy for me. The end of our love was upon us. As the car sped into the night, my silence spoke volumes. Are we going home? She asked quietly. We don't have a home anymore. When you broke our marriage vows, you destroyed it. It's just a house now, a place where I used to be happy, where I loved and trusted a wife who was my best friend. I said, my sadness unmistakable. Kelly started to cry. Is there any way you could forgive me? Please, I'll do anything. I'm so sorry. Do you think I can ever forget what I saw tonight? When you allowed him to disrespect our marriage, you shattered everything between us. You made a choice to betray me again and again. That ended our marriage. Please forgive me. I love you with all my heart. I let him use me for the thrill of it. I never thought about the consequences. It was a foolish mistake, she pleaded. You call it a game, but it wasn't just a game for me. I replied, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. The car slowed to a stop. Where are we? She asked, her concern evident. Get out of the car, I commanded, my tone leaving no room for argument. Kelly followed me to the door. Mrs. Stevens? I asked. Yes, how can I help you? She replied. My name is Jake Gray. I used to work for your husband's company. May I speak with you for a moment? Is Jim okay? What's this about? She asked, worry on her face. I held Kelly's arm firmly as we entered the house. Please come in. Have a seat. She was the kind of wife I thought I had, and I knew my actions would cause her pain. Jim would suffer much worse. He should have understood me better. I was driven by feelings I couldn't fully explain. This will only take a short time, Mrs. Stevens. My wife has something to tell you. All eyes turned to Kelly. Tell her, I urged, tightening my grip on her arm. She hesitated. Tell her, I insisted again. My husband caught me with Jim tonight at the Christmas party, she said, the words spilling out like poison. We've been involved for the past 4 years, she cried, expressing regret over her choices. Her words left us all in stunned silence. Jim's wife looked more enraged than shocked. She had always known he was problematic, but hearing about his infidelity weakened her resolve. She quickly walked over to Kelly and slapped her hard. Kelly stumbled back, holding her face in shock. Get out of my house, she hissed. When I'm done divorcing his worthless self, you can have him, she said, regarding Kelly as though she were roadkill. It felt good to know Jim was in for a rude awakening when he returned. I realized Kelly and I would soon part forever, and it hurt to look at her. I never imagined a day would come when my beloved wife would need my protection, and I couldn't provide it. Things happen, I said as we approached her sister's house. We'll be divorced. The house will be sold, and I'll take 70% of the equity. We'll divide our investments equally and keep our own pensions. If you don't contest the divorce, I won't use your infidelity against you, which would involve the testimony of people who know what you've been doing for the past 4 years. I'm sure my friends would be happy to support that. I'll mail the transcript to every friend and relative you have, exposing everything, I warned. It's up to you. There's nothing I can do, Jake, she replied, looking defeated and desperate. You already know the answer to that question, don't you? My revenge will last a long time, maybe forever. What are you going to do to me? She asked. I know you're fundamentally a good person whose mistakes have cost us dearly. I believe you loved me, but it doesn't matter now. You've been a good wife, but your choices have had serious consequences. I chose to ignore that part of you throughout our marriage, but I won't make that mistake again. Your guilt will haunt you. It will consume you. When you realize I'm never coming back, you'll feel profound loss and long for my forgiveness. As we pulled up to her sister's house, I added, You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon. Don't go back to the house until noon tomorrow. I'll be gone by then. I'll return when you aren't there to collect the rest of my things. That's it, Jake. Over 6 years of marriage, gone just like that? She asked, disbelief in her voice. Just like that. Goodbye, I said, handing her back her belongings. Tears rolled down her face as she stepped out of the car. Tears rolled down my face too. The divorce with Kelly was finalized in 6 months, but now, 8 months later, I wonder if I should have let her see my pain. I realize I lost control the night I discovered the truth, and I don't feel good about it. Since then, I've tried not to grieve our relationship, though I found myself constantly depressed for the first 6 months after our separation. She tried calling several times. If she left a message, I erased it. If I answered and heard her voice, I hung up. It was a matter of self-defense. Despite everything, I still loved her, but I couldn't let her hurt me again. My dignity and self-respect depended on my strength. The less angry I became, the more vulnerable I felt. My love for her hadn't died, but I couldn't be with her after the divorce was finalized. Eventually, she gave up trying to reach me. What could she say? I love you. It was just a mistake. I didn't want to hear her lies and excuses, especially knowing that even if it happened just once, she had become complicit in his wrongdoings. What I saw revealed how much she was enjoying his attention. She signed the divorce papers and didn't show up at the final hearing, which was probably for the best. I didn't want or need to see her again. It was impossible to tell whether her absence indicated her pain and acceptance that our marriage was over, or if she simply didn't care. I used to think I understood her, but after what I had witnessed, anything seemed possible. Flashbacks of her defeated expression the last time I saw her were etched into my mind, oddly growing more powerful over time, while the image of her with him began to fade. Even though I knew our love had been a facade, I still missed her. God help me, I could never trust her again. There was no way to know if she ever truly loved me. Had I been just a pawn in some secret master plan? I couldn't fathom how she thought it was okay to treat me like this. If she loved me, how could she show me such disrespect? The questions left me feeling inadequate and confused. I didn't believe I could ever trust another woman. I needed to take action, but I didn't know how to extricate her from my life. My desire for revenge against her felt like a distant fantasy, relying on the hope that she had loved me as I loved her. The reality hit me. I never really knew her. I had fallen for an illusion. Could it all have been just smoke and mirrors? The end of our marriage came without warning, like a sudden storm. My life as I knew it was over in one night. When the story about what happened leaked, some friends viewed me as a heartless villain, while others felt I should have done more to punish and humiliate her. None of that mattered anymore. I was no longer enraged, just lost. I didn't want to dwell on the past, and I had no plans for the future. I received $500,000 in hush money from the president of the company with the understanding that I would keep the company's name and his nephew out of the courts and newspapers. He even offered me a vice president position, but there was no way I could stay. I couldn't bear the looks from my former colleagues. Their expressions said it all. Some pitied me, while others judged me for allowing my wife to betray me for so long. It felt like everyone knew what was happening with Kelly and Jim except me. With the money I'd received to prevent a lawsuit for alienation of affection, my share of the equity in the house, and our investments, I decided I didn't need to look for work anytime soon. I started drinking every day to fill the lonely hours and the emptiness in my life. One night, while at my favorite bar, I struck up a conversation with the bartender. Fred. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and a face that told stories of a hard life. Fred was a straight shooter, the kind of guy you wanted on your side in a bar fight. He had heard it all and seen it all. I had brought Kelly to this bar many times. It was close to home, and we both enjoyed the good food and lively music. The last time we were there, we danced as if tomorrow would never come, lost in each other's eyes. Why didn't I see the betrayal lurking behind her smile? Maybe I didn't want to. Afterward, we went home, and it felt like we were in our own world. But that was gone now. I found myself scanning every woman who entered the bar, looking for Kelly, while simultaneously dreading the thought of seeing her. Fred noticed my state. Jake, I've never known you to be a heavy drinker. I'm worried about you, brother. You're on your third scotch, and you haven't been here 15 minutes. I hope you don't mind me butting in, but it looks like you have a lot on your mind. I've been tending bar long enough to learn how to listen, if you want to talk about it. I finally let it out. There had been too many conversations in my head, and Fred listened patiently as I shared my story. After a long silence, he spoke. Your ex was in here a couple of weeks ago. She looked beautiful, and she didn't seem to be grieving. She kept glancing around just like you are now. Maybe she was looking for you. She could love you in her own complicated way. Don't try to make sense of it. She came in with an older guy who seemed like he had money and was used to getting his way. She didn't look unhappy, but she didn't look happy either. The deal is, you're crying in your beer and suffering alone while she's out there dancing. A new image of my ex flashed in my head. I could see her, smell her perfume, and hear her laugh. It felt distant from the sobbing wretch I had left behind, but she was still that captivating, manipulating force of nature. So much for my revenge. I wondered if she had felt any of the torment and loss that had plagued me since the night we parted. I said nothing as I hung my head, lost in my thoughts. The grief I had been trying to repress rushed over me, and I was powerless to stop it. I was glad Fred was there. I felt an overwhelming sense of mourning for what was dead and gone. Fred understood what was happening to me. Now, what I'm about to say may sound a bit hard, but you've got to pull yourself together, Jake. Your situation has changed, and you have to change with it. That's all you need to know. Grow up, get your body back in shape, and move on. On your feet, soldier. March or die. The answers to your problems aren't in a bottle. You're stuck, and if you don't watch out, you could be there forever, hiding in a bottle. You're close to losing respect for yourself, and if you let that happen, you'll have only yourself to blame. The first thing you need to do is get out there and find some company. You're too good a man to let this get you down. Find someone, enjoy yourself, and clear your head. Get on with your life. Fred said, sounding like a combination of a friend, a counselor, and a drill sergeant. My weakness felt embarrassing, but I followed Fred's advice. I stopped drinking, started working out, and began seeing people casually. It wasn't love, and I couldn't remember most of their names, but those encounters helped me regain my self-esteem. It wasn't intimacy, It was more about reclaiming my sense of self. They became the life preservers that kept me from drowning in despair. As I began to feel better and my confidence grew, I realized I wasn't responsible for Kelly's behavior. If anything, I should have addressed her self-centered ways a long time ago. Whatever demons drove her were not of my making. Once I understood that, my depression began to lift. I needed to get out of town, away from her. I didn't need to see or hear anything that reminded me of her. I bought a motorcycle, sold or gave away my possessions, and headed south. I hit the road with no map or destination. It didn't matter what road I was on. They all went somewhere. Sitting on the bike, I felt free. It had been a few years since I had ridden, but before I left the state, I was one with the bike and the road. I was no longer a white-collar drone or a drunk. I felt like a modern-day cowboy. The bike was my horse. Beautiful, powerful, yet fragile, and it would be dangerous if the rider didn't stay in control. I was a biker, and the road ahead was more important than what lay behind. I was in control of my life. These thoughts became part of my life philosophy. As I rode, I could smell the rhythms of life around me, feel the slight temperature variations as the hills and valleys rose and fell, while the scenery blurred by. It felt good to be alive. I found myself hoping there were motorcycles in heaven. Dying wouldn't be so bad. I was in the moment. What happened yesterday or what would happen tomorrow were no longer concerns. Every mile brought me closer to a feeling of peace. The blast of wind and the roar of the big V-twin engine became music to my soul. I rode through many little towns with funny names, met interesting people, and enjoyed a lot of greasy food. Some roads were good, some were bad. That's life, I guess. Then I turned west. Just outside of Tula, Oklahoma, I passed a woman desperately trying to get me to stop. I waited for her on the side of the road until she caught up to me. I couldn't imagine why she was alone in the middle of nowhere. She was of average height, blonde, and very pretty, but she was crying, and it looked like someone had hurt her. "Please help me," she said, tears streaming down her face. Even in her distress, she was striking, her green eyes drawing me in like pools of warm water. "Sure, how can I help you?" I asked, unsure of what I was getting into. "I need a ride to Tulsa. My ex-boyfriend is on his way to my house. He said he's going to kill my mother and my daughter. Do you have a cell phone?" She asked frantically. I wanted to ask her what was going on, but her desperate state didn't allow for questions. There would be time later to get to the bottom of it. I gave her my phone, and she called the police. After talking to them, she seemed a little less stressed. "You don't know me, and you've been more than kind, but could I ask you to give me a ride to my house? I'll show you where to go. I pray to God that maniac doesn't get there before the police. Please hurry." Before I could answer, she was on the back of the bike, holding me tight. We sped down the road, and I used all my skills to get her to her child and mother. I think I broke every traffic law on the books. It felt good to have her arms around me. I felt needed, even though I didn't know her name. As we approached her house, I felt a knot in my stomach. If this guy had a gun, we were both in trouble. To my relief, when we arrived, the police were already there, putting handcuffs on a man who was resisting arrest. Dawn jumped off the bike and ran toward the house. The man saw her, shouting threats as they drove away. "Mom, are you and Rachel okay?" "I was so worried," she said, hugging her mother. Just then, a cute little girl appeared. "Mommy, you're home. Jack was here. He said he was going to kill us. Why does he want to hurt me and Grandma?" I stood behind her, feeling a bit awkward at that moment. Both the mother and grandmother realized I was there. "Please forgive me," Dawn said. "I don't even know your name." Jake Gray," I replied, extending my hand to Dawn. "This is my mother, June, and this is," she said, putting her arm around the little girl, "my little angel, Rachel. Mr. Gray was nice enough to take me here after Jack slapped me and left me on the side of the road," Dawn explained. "I was so worried. He's crazy. When I told him I didn't want anything else to do with him, I thought he was going to kill me. I'm very glad to meet you, ladies, and especially you, Rachel, I said, smiling down at the little girl. I'm glad I could be of some help. Please, call me Jake. Mr. Gray is my father's name. I'm sorry it couldn't be under better circumstances. I'm glad they got that guy before he hurt somebody. He acted like a real danger. Before I could say more, Rachel chimed in. Could you take me for a ride on your motorcycle? Please. I like motorcycles. She looked at her mother expectantly, completely oblivious to the drama her mother had just faced. We'll see, Rachel. If it's okay with your mommy, I replied. It's okay with me, June said, extending her hand. As we shook hands, she said, We thank you, Mr. Gray. Jake. Would you like to stay for dinner? I guess we owe you some kind of explanation for your kindness. I'd love to stay for dinner, June. I haven't had a home-cooked meal in a long time. Well, I hope you're hungry. Mama always cooks too much, Dawn said with a twinkle in her eyes. Are you married? Rachel asked. No, I'm not, I replied, kneeling to meet her eye to eye. Why, do you want to marry me? I'm too little, she concluded, then added, but you could marry Mommy. We all smiled at her innocence, feeling a little embarrassed. Rachel, we just met Jake. He doesn't even know us, Dawn said with the protective tone only a mother could have. I know, but he has a motorcycle and I like him. Well, now that we have that settled, let's eat, June said. I had just met these people, yet I felt like I was talking to family. Their sincerity and warmth, along with their troubles, tapped into my protective instincts. There were good vibrations in this family, and I wanted to know more about Jack. He seemed dangerously out of control, and I was seriously concerned for their safety. Dinner was served, and both Dawn and her mother seemed happy to see me enjoying the food. I gave them some background about my divorce and how I had been writing aimlessly for months, trying to regroup my life. They nodded empathetically as I spoke, and I sensed they liked me too. Both of them kept giving me sly, appraising looks, as if they were trying to figure out what kind of man I really was. Little Rachel already knew. She sat next to me and reached out to touch my arm now and then, which made me smile. I looked at Dawn and said, Tell me how you got mixed up with Jack. I don't like Jack. He's a mean man, and he hit Mommy, Rachel replied. Dawn's face fell as she realized how much her relationship with Jack had affected her daughter. At first, he was considerate and kind. I didn't love him, but he was decent company in the beginning. I knew he wasn't good for me, but I was lonely and needed someone to talk to. Then he quickly changed, started drinking heavily, and didn't want me to talk to my friends or family. He even started treating Rachel like unwanted baggage. I couldn't tolerate his abuse any longer. When I finally told him it was over, he became violent. He insisted that if I would speak with him one last time, he would leave us alone. That's how I ended up standing on the side of the road. Please tell me you're not Rachel's father, I asked, hoping he wasn't. No. My husband, Brian, is Rachel's father. He was killed in Iraq. We've been on our own since then. It's been more than 3 years now, and I've only known Jack for a month. That's how I got into this mess. I suggested she go to the courthouse on Monday and get an order of protection. He threatened you in front of the police. The order will be automatic, and he'll be arrested immediately if he comes anywhere near you or your family. I want to ride the motorcycle, Rachel said, lightening the conversation in a way only a child could. Okay, I'm sure Jake will give you a ride, said Dawn. If you're finished eating, go watch cartoons. I want to talk to Jake some more. Okay, honey. Come on, sugar, let's see what's on, said June. Okay, Mommy. See you later, Jake, she said as she skipped away. Wow, your daughter really gets to me. She is something else, I said. I think she looks like you. Rachel is my angel. If anything happened to her, I don't think I could make it. Through the past couple of years, she's been my light. I understand, I said, taking her hands in mine. It felt like the natural thing to do. That moment was magical. The warmth from her hands radiated up my arm and filled my heart. I wanted this woman. All I could see were her eyes, and we were communicating without words. I knew she felt it too. Something powerful was transpiring, and it scared me a little. It's getting late. I should go find a place to sleep tonight, I said, standing up and feeling nervous as my life shifted again. We have plenty of room. Stay here. Please, Rachel would love it. Really? How about you? I asked, knowing what the answer would be. Yes, I would love it too. I feel so safe around you. You're my knight in shining armor. You rode in and saved me on your motorcycle. I'd be happy to help you until you get on your feet, I said, smiling. I noticed your house could use a few repairs. I'd be happy to help with that. Okay, that would be great, Jake. It will be nice to have you around for a while. It's Friday night. Do you know a place we could go dancing? Not too fancy. I'm afraid I'm not carrying much in the way of clothes. Yep, I know just the place, she said, genuinely enthusiastic. Let me see. My husband Brian was about your size. I never got around to throwing away his things. I'll show you where I keep them. Please, if you see anything that fits, help yourself. I have to get ready. Come on, I'll show you where the stuff is. It's in the guest bedroom. There's a bathroom in there if you want to take a shower. It's a country bar, so don't get too dressed up. She disappeared and came back an hour later. Holy smokes, I said when I saw her. She had cleaned up really well. Dawn was wearing jeans, high-heeled shoes, and a top that complemented her figure, highlighting her beauty. Pearls adorned her neck, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She took my breath away, exuding both youth and maturity. You're positively stunning, I said, unable to hide the smile on my face. I'm just a little old country girl, she replied coyly. If that's the case, I love the country, I said, feeling an undeniable attraction. She beamed at the compliment, and I felt as though I'd hit the jackpot. I wondered how she would handle all the masculine attention she would receive. The last time I went out with a beautiful woman, well, we all know how that turned out. Thank you, kind sir. You're looking quite handsome yourself. I think we make a very cute couple. Shall we go? She was a little nervous as she walked out the door, and I couldn't help but admire her graceful hips. It was hard to control my growing attraction. I couldn't find anything about her I didn't like. It was too early to say I was in love, but I was definitely infatuated. The club was bigger than I expected, and heads turned to follow her as we entered. She acted as if she had no idea how beautiful she was. The band had people dancing, nodding their heads to the music, smiling and laughing. Dawn showed me how to step in some country and western dances. I was having a great time and discovered that I really liked country music. When the music slowed down, I took every opportunity to pull her close. It felt like this woman was meant to be with me, and I needed her to feel the same way. We sat down to drink a beer, rest, and talk. She politely refused to dance with anyone else. I learned that she had a degree from the University of Oklahoma and was a teacher. Her late husband was a captain in the Army. When he was killed in action, she didn't think she could ever love again. I felt the same way after the end of my marriage. Dawn went to the ladies' room, and I watched as she moved through the crowd. Several men tried to buy her a drink or engage her in conversation, but they all failed. She didn't even smile at them. I liked what I saw. Thanks for flagging me down today. Meeting you is the best thing that has happened to me in a long time, I said when she returned. I know we just met, but I think it feels right for us to be together. It's like our spirits know each other. I feel that way too, Jake. But there's something you need to know about me. Any man in my life would have to accept two things. First, Rachel is my life. We're a package deal. And second, the love I have for Brian is still there. It always will be, even though he's gone. Do you understand? A man in my life would have to share me with his memory. Are you man enough to deal with that? I looked down for a moment before lifting my gaze to hers again, taking her hands in mine. Absolutely, I answered without reservation. I couldn't imagine being too far away from her. I had always wanted to be with someone who could love me like that. I respect what you're saying. I know he was a good man. I just hope there's room in your heart to love again. If I were him, that's what I'd want, I said sincerely. I could, Jake. The love I still hold for my deceased husband is special and occupies a special place in my heart. I have a big heart. I'm sure there's room for more love in there, she said, looking at me with hope on her face, trying to reassure herself of my sincerity and willingness to understand her situation with Rachel. When we got back to her house, I turned to face her at the door, looking deeply into her eyes. "Can I have a hug?" I asked, reaching out my arms. I embraced her tightly and then gently kissed her, savoring the moment. I wanted her to know how special she was. That night, I couldn't sleep as I lay in bed thinking about Dawn and the events of the day. I knew I wasn't homeless anymore. With Dawn was where I wanted to be. She entered the room and closed the door without saying a word, slipping into bed with me and cuddling close. When I started to speak, she pressed her fingers to my lips, silencing me. I leaned in to kiss her neck, feeling a surge of desire. I resisted the urge to claim her completely, wanting the night to be unforgettable for both of us. As the weeks passed, Jack's trial for assault and resisting arrest was approaching. If he made bail, he'd be back. Dawn didn't talk much about her fear of him, but I knew it lingered. We shared our nights together, her kind and gentle nature bringing out the best in me. Our needs complemented each other. She needed a provider, lover, and protector, while I wanted to protect and care for someone special. My life with Kelly faded further into the background. I could think of her without feeling emotional, even wishing her well and finding her happiness. Dawn would slip out early in the mornings to avoid setting a bad example for Rachel. "So, when are you going to ask her?" June asked me one morning over coffee. "What?" I said, spilling a little as I was caught off guard. "If I ever saw two people who should be together, it's you and Dawn. And Rachel too," June said, turning to face me as she washed the dishes. "You know she loves you, right? I never thought I'd see her so happy again." "I know. I love her too. And Rachel. I feel at home here," I said, walking over to give her a hug. "We haven't known each other long. I just don't want to rush things. I guess I should tell her I love her, huh? What do you think?" she asked, patting me on the shoulder before leaving the kitchen to let me think. That night, as I waited for Dawn, I decided I would discuss the topic of marriage with her. I knew she was the right woman. It was important that she understood what it meant to me, and we needed to make some sacred promises to each other before making any public vows. I resolved to be open about what needed to be said, unlike in my first marriage. Suddenly, I heard a piercing scream. It was Dawn. I instantly knew Jack was in the house. I grabbed the 9mm clock I had bought after meeting the residency requirements. I didn't want to face an empty-handed gunfight. I rushed to Dawn's room in my underwear, and when I arrived, I saw Jack on top of her, trying to assault her. She was fighting him, calling my name. "Get up, Jack." "Real slow," I said, placing the pistol behind his ear. "If you flinch, you're dead. I'd love to blow your head off. In fact, I just might anyway." When he stood up, his pants fell to the floor, and he attempted to pull them back up. "Leave them there. If you move again, I'll kill you," I ordered. "Dawn, call the police and tell them that Jack has entered your house and tried to assault you. Keep Rachel and June in their rooms. Come with me," I instructed. Jack shuffled along to the front door, his pants making movement difficult. When we reached the door, I told him to get on his knees. "Are you ready to face the consequences, Jack? You picked the wrong family and the wrong man to mess with. You're going to pay for threatening Dawn and her family." "Who are you?" he stammered. "I'm someone who stands up for those I care about," I said quietly, tightening my grip on his collar. I pressed the gun behind his ear, making it clear that he was in a serious situation. Say your prayers. You're about to understand the gravity of your actions. After a long moment, the sound of the hammer echoed in the silence, and I could see he was terrified. I had removed the magazine. There was no bullet in the chamber. But he didn't know that. If you ever think about coming near Dawn or her family again, the gun will be loaded next time. When the police arrived, they took him away. As a repeat offender, he would face serious consequences. I didn't think he ever wanted to see me again. After the police left, I stood by the door in my boxers, holding the gun. Dawn, Rachel, and June rushed toward me. Rachel grabbed my legs while Dawn and June hugged me tightly, all talking at once. Okay, ladies, he's gone. And he's not coming back. We're safe. I promise. We always will be. 3 months later, Dawn and I were married, and our son Brian was born a year after that. He looks just like me, and Rachel was overjoyed to have a baby brother. I asked Fred to be his godfather, and he was honored to accept. He's become part of our family. Dawn is teaching, and June babysits. We bought a new house, and I opened a McDonald's franchise. I adopted Rachel, and she rides with me all the time. She has motorcycles in her blood. I learned that when life sends you down a rough road, the only solution is to find a new path. I'm happy. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.